The life and mystique of Marchesa Casati. Imagine strolling through Venice one moonlit night in the early 1920s and encountering an otherworldly figure, a tall, flame-haired woman draped in furs, and nothing else, promenading two leashed cheetahs with diamond collars. This was Marchesa Luisa Casati, an Italian aristocrat turned artistic spectacle who became legend in her own time. In the 1930s, press across Europe dubbed her the most daring and extravagant woman in Europe, and with good reason. Born in 1881 to immense wealth, Casati used her fortune to transform herself into a living legend of glamour and eccentricity. She declared unabashedly, "I want to be a living work of art," a motto she lived by every single day. To those who met her, Casati's appearance was unforgettable. She stood unusually tall and deathly slender, with a wild mane of henna-red hair crowning a powdered white face and dramatically coloured green eyes framed by enormous false lashes. She exaggerated every feature for effect, mascara and kohl ringing her eyes like a mask, even reportedly dilating her pupils with belladonna for a luminous stare. One contemporary, the artist John Cocteau, remarked that her self-fashioned mask gave the impression she had willfully ravaged a great beauty to create this surreal persona. Indeed, Luisa Casati made herself her greatest masterpiece. Portrait artist Augustus John quipped that Luisa Casati should be shot, stuffed and displayed in a glass case, as though she were an exotic specimen of art to be preserved for the ages. Bizarre as it sounds, Casati herself played along with this notion. She even commissioned a life-sized wax mannequin of herself to pose as her double at dinner parties and fashion fittings. Such was the myth and mystique of the Marchesa, a woman who turned life into art and herself into a canvas. In this episode, we'll explore how Marchesa Casati's singular life and style left an indelible mark on fashion. We'll delve into her influence on early 20th century haute couture and avant-garde style, her role as a living artwork long before performance art had a name, her impact as a muse to artists and designers then and now, and the legacy of personal branding and theatrical self-expression she pioneered. Casati's story is scholarly in its cultural significance, yet as fantastical as a fairy tale, so let's step into her world of art, fashion, and imagination. Welcome to the Fashion Memoir. Look 1. Haute couture and the avant-garde, Casati's fashion influence. Luisa Casati didn't merely follow fashion, she commissioned it, inspired it, and often became it. As a wealthy marquise in the early 1900s, she patronized the most celebrated couturiers of her era to bring her extravagant visions to life. Designers such as Paul Poiret, Mariano Fortuny, Jean Paquin, and even legendary costumers like Worth and Erté counted Casati among their muses and best clients. She would appear at society balls in outfits so theatrical that they bordered on the absurd, yet they always set trends. For a Queen of the Night-themed ball in 1922, Casati donned a midnight black ensemble, adorned with astrological symbols and peacock feathers, based on a design by Léon Bakst of the Ballet Russe. The effect was reportedly as blindingly brilliant as the belladonna in her eyes, leaving onlookers awestruck. Her fashion indulgences were legendary. Casati adored luxurious textiles and dramatic silhouettes. She swept about in flowing velvet cloaks, shimmering metallic gowns and billowing silk trousers at a time when such exotic style was unheard of. She favored Fortuny's classically draped dresses and Poiret's cutting-edge Orientalist designs, wearing them not simply as clothing but as extensions of her theatrical self. One day she might emerge in a gold lame turbane and a gown that glowed, and the next in a sharp military-inspired suit of lights that literally sparked. She once wore an electric bulb-studded armored costume that nearly electrocuted her. By embracing the avant-garde and the outrageous, Casati was effectively pushing fashion into the realm of art. She blurred the line between costume and couture, paving the way for designers to take bolder creative risks. It's no surprise then that many in the avant-garde art world saw kinship in Casati's style experiments. The Italian futurists, artists like F.T. Marinetti and Umberto Boccioni, and the surrealists, later on, recognized that Casati's radical approach to dress was kindred to their own artistic provocations. In other words, her wardrobe was a form of manifestos, fashion as an art performance. She treated the couture house as her atelier and the city street as her runway stage. A century before social media influencers, Casati understood how fashion could create mythology. Every appearance she made was a headline-generating spectacle. Every ensemble was a statement. As one admirer observed, everywhere she went, she set trends, shocking even the most jaded aristocrats. Casati also wasn't shy about criticizing the mundane style of others. She lamented the conformity she saw in women's dress, famously saying, "Women of the world today dress alike. They are like so many loaves of bread. There is too much sameness. To be different is to be alone." In that simple but searing observation, Casati pinpointed the cost of true originality, a cost she paid gladly. She was often alone in her aesthetic. No other lady of her station walked pet cheetahs in couture after all. Yet she reveled in that uniqueness. By daring to be different, she expanded the possibilities of beauty and style. She showed that fashion could be fantastical, individualized, even bizarre, anything but boring. Haute couture, in particular, owes much to Casati's fearless experimentation. She inspired designers to treat their runways as creative theater and to design clothes for impact, drama, and identity, not just utility. The ripple effect of her style would be felt for decades. Look 2, a living work of art, performance and personal branding. More than anything, Marchesa Casati turned her life into a work of art. Long before the term performance art existed, Casati was performing herself. She cultivated an image, extravagant, mysterious, a touch macabre, and inhabited it fully, making daily life into a staged spectacle. Ordinary routines became chance opportunities for artful drama. For example, Casati might simply be taking her morning stroll, but she would do so nude under a flowing fur coat, at midnight, accompanied by her pet cheetahs and a servant holding flaming torches aloft to light her way. In such moments, she was like a painter composing a living tableau, herself as the central figure, with Venice's Piazza San Marco her theatrical backdrop. It left an indelible impression on witnesses and fed the legend that was La Casati. Casati's home life was no less theatrical. She hosted lavish masquerade balls and dinner-time extravaganzas where reality blurred into fantasy. At her dining table, you might find wax mannequins posed as guests, unsettlingly lifelike effigies dressed exactly as the Marchesa, some rumored to contain the ashes of her former lovers. Instead of fresh flowers, she would sometimes decorate her garden with artificial blooms made of Murano glass, or have servants painted head to toe in gold leaf serving her guests. Even her pets became props in her show. Casati walked around with live snakes coiled as necklaces and allegedly slept on cushions adorned or infested with live reptiles. Every choice was deliberate and provocative, designed to collapse the distance between art and life. In embodying such a persona, Casati was a forerunner of personal branding. Much like modern style icons or performance artists construct a public image, Casati crafted her identity with artistic intent. She was, in effect, her own best creation. Writer Quentin Crisp, who met Casati in her later years, marveled at this lifelong commitment. He recalled the elderly Marchesa arriving at a lunch, wearing black velvet from head to foot, her mouth painted blood red, carrying a very tall ornate umbrella, and you must understand, this ensemble was being worn in the middle of the day. Even in old age, she refused to fade into drab respectability. Crisp noted that Casati wanted to fulfill an ideal, a vision of how she should look and exist, to become a being of her own invention, not of any particular sex, or time, or size, or shape. In other words, she fashioned herself into a living artwork beyond ordinary categories. This astute observation by Crisp captures Casati's legacy as a proto-performance artist and self-made icon. She was living proof that style can be philosophy, that through imagination and will, one's very existence can become a form of artistic expression. Importantly, Casati's art was not confined to the clothes she wore, but extended to how she lived and presented herself to the world. Famed couturière Elsa Schiaparelli, a pioneer of avant-garde fashion in the 1930s, admired Casati for this quality. Schiaparelli said of her, she represented a past age of splendor when a few beautiful and wealthy women adopted an almost brutally individualistic way of living and presenting themselves to the public. That brutally individualistic presentation, essentially Casati's personal brand, made the Marchesa a precursor to every bold style maverick and fashion performance we see today. Whether it's celebrities turning heads with outrageous Met Gala costumes, or artists blurring life and art in reality TV and Instagram personas, Casati was there first, over a century ago, walking her cheetahs and wearing her snakes, challenging the world to look at her and dare to look away. Look 3. Muse to artists and designers, inspiration across eras. Casati's influence extended well beyond her own self-styling. She was a genuine muse to an astonishing array of creative luminaries. In her heyday, virtually every major portrait artist in Europe clamored for a chance to capture the Marchesa's likeness, and she obliged, seeking immortality through their work. By some counts, she is possibly the most artistically represented woman in history after the Virgin Mary and Cleopatra. She sat for paintings by Giovanni Boldini, who depicted her in dramatic swirls of motion and fabric, and by Kees van Dongen, who immortalised her huge dark-rimmed eyes and gaunt features on canvas. The famed Romain Brooks painted a haunting nude portrait of Casati in 1920, emphasizing her spectral pallor and flame hair. Sculptors like Paolo Trubetskoy, Jacob Epstein, and futurist artist Giacomo Bolla chiseled and cast her image in marble and bronze. And photographers too were fascinated. Man Ray took surrealist photographs of Casati, Baron Adolf de Meyer and Cecil Beaton shot her in all her flamboyance. The cumulative result of this artistic frenzy is a kind of visual canon of Casati, dozens upon dozens of paintings, sketches, sculptures and photos that collectively cement her legacy. It's as if she existed in perpetual dialogue with artists, inspiring them with her look and receiving immortality in return. Nor was her influence limited to the visual arts. Writers and poets name-dropped Casati in their works. Italian novelist Gabriele D'Annunzio, who was also Casati's lover for a time, wrote characters inspired by her unbridled spirit. Later on, beat poet Jack Kerouac evoked Casati in one of his verses, famously calling her a living doll in a poem. Playwrights and filmmakers modeled eccentric characters after her. The Marchesa became a living legend while still alive, the kind of mythical figure who straddled reality and imagination. Most relevant to our theme, however, is Casati's impact on fashion designers, both her contemporaries and those long after her. During her life, Casati directly inspired designers like Leon Bakst, who designed costumes for her, and her daring patronage emboldened couturiers such as Poiret and Schiaparelli to push their designs further into the avant-garde. She was known to collaborate with artists on her costumes, once even staging a marionette ballet, for which she had Fortunato de Pero, a futurist artist, build elaborate puppets, and composer Maurice Ravel provide music. Decades later, as the history of fashion was written, designers continued to look back at Casati as an enduring muse. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, several landmark fashion collections were overt homages to the Marchesa Luisa Casati's style. For example, Alexander McQueen's spring 1997 haute couture collection for Givenchy featured models with Casati-esque fiery wigs and dark, smoldering eyes, explicitly citing Casati as inspiration. John Galliano, at Christian Dior, devoted his spring 1998 couture show to Casati's spirit, sending out opulent, surreal gowns that echoed Casati's decadent costumes. Decades later, Karl Lagerfeld too channeled Casati. His Chanel Resort collection in 2010 was directly inspired by her glamorous ghost, reimagining what Casati might wear in modern times. Lagerfeld even photographed editor Karine Reitfeld styled as a modern Casati, noting admiringly that she plays a modern Casati, but the drama of Casati was that she was not playing, meaning Casati's eccentricity was no act, but absolutely sincere. The list goes on. Fashion house Valentino's pre-fall 2015 collection nodded to Casati's astrology-themed wardrobe. Designers Dries Van Noten, Alberta Ferretti, and Moschino have all invoked her theatrical flair in recent years. There is even an entire fashion label named after her, Marchesa, the red carpet couture brand founded in 2004 by Georgina Chapman and Karen Craig, explicitly took Casati's title as their brand name in her honor. Over a century after her birth, Casati is still credited as the muse behind some of the most unforgettable designs in fashion. Her signature elements, jet black coal eyes, extravagant headpieces, fearless mixtures of luxury and feral beauty, can be spotted echoing down runways and photo spreads to this day. Look 4. Enduring legacy and modern relevance. What makes Marchesa Luisa Casati's legacy so enduring? In part, it's the sheer boldness of her example. Casati showed that style can transcend time and even economics. She spent her entire fortune on her extravagant art of living and ultimately died penniless in 1957, yet her carefully cultivated image made her immortal in cultural memory. Even as she aged and lost her money, she never lost her commitment to spectacle. Living in a modest London flat in the 1950s, the former millionairess would scavenge discarded ribbons and fabrics from trash bins to assemble new eccentric outfits, refusing to relinquish her self-image as an otherworldly creature. Observers at the time, who might have once mocked her flamboyance, came to recognize how ahead of her time she truly was. As novelist Maurice Drouin remarked, when the elderly Casati tottered through the streets of London in tattered finery, it took all of the dignity of the English not to just gawk at this phantom, noting that the very qualities that seemed mad in one era appeared chic to a later generation. Indeed, modern fashion revels in many of the elements Casati pioneered: Gothic glamour, gender-bending style, fantastical themes, and the fusion of daywear with evening drama. In a sense, Casati foresaw the future of fashion. As one writer put it, there is a supreme cachet, even a nobility, in losing everything but one's style, and Casati carried that notion to its extreme. Today, Casati's legacy lives on every time fashion embraces artful excess or a fearless individuality. Whenever you see a runway show that feels more like performance art than a clothing presentation, or a celebrity who treats their public appearances as imaginative cosplay, you can catch a glimmer of Casati's spirit. She has been the subject of museum exhibitions and countless articles, continuing to inspire new generations to break free of convention. In recent decades, biographies like Infinite Variety, The Life and Legend of the Marchesa Casati, have reintroduced her story to the world, and her likeness adorns gallery walls thanks to the many artworks she inspired. Fashion historians consider Casati a perennial muse, a touchstone for understanding the interplay of fashion, art, and identity. Perhaps most importantly, Marchesa Casati's life invites us to reflect on the power of imagination in everyday life. She asked in action, if not in words, why be ordinary? Why not live as extravagantly as you dream? In doing so, she also foreshadowed modern ideas of personal branding, the concept that one's life can be one's art. Casati essentially branded herself with her striking visual trademarks: the fiery hair, kohl-rimmed eyes, pet cheetahs and snakes, etc. Much as icons like David Bowie, Lady Gaga, or Björk would do in later eras. But unlike many who adopt personas, Casati never broke character, she blurred it with her true self. This total dedication is why her legend endures and continues to captivate. The last look. Marchesa Luisa Casati stands as a testament to the symbiosis of fashion and art. She embodied the idea that style is not a shallow pursuit, but can be a profound form of self-expression and cultural commentary. Casati's influence on haute couture, her role as a living precursor to performance art, and her status as muse to artists and designers demonstrate a legacy that goes far beyond her own extravagant life. She challenged the world to see fashion as more than fabric, as fantasy, provocation, and statement. Through her fearless embrace of the extraordinary, she carved out a unique place in history, one that continues to inspire designers on the runway and dreamers in everyday life. Marchesa Casati's story is a reminder that personal style can be revolutionary. Her life encourages us to ask, what do we want to express to the world? How can we make our lives a canvas for our ideals? The Marchesa blurred the line between life and art in her own flamboyant way, and in doing so she left behind a rich tapestry of inspiration. To this day you can glimpse her influence shimmering in the pages of Vogue, walking the red carpet on the shoulders of starlets, or haunting the halls of art museums. If this tale of the divine Marchesa has intrigued you, consider exploring further. View the paintings she inspired, read the writings of those who knew her, or dive into one of her biographies. The more you look, the more you'll find that Marchesa Luisa Casati's impact is woven throughout the fabric of fashion history. In a world that often urges us to conform, Casati's flamboyant legacy shines like a beacon, whispering that life is the greatest masterpiece we can create. And in that spirit, she truly achieved her goal, to be a living work of art. Let me know in the comments who else I should cover. And if you loved this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Now stay stylish and inspired. This has been the Fashion Memoir.